So here we are, after a long wait, and I'm not sure how I feel. I'm sad. It feels like saying goodbye to old friends. But I'm also kind of disappointed. It was a good movie, don't get me wrong, but not the great one I was hoping for.
Welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing.
Endgame, the fourth Avenger movie. And there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of balls that they had to keep up in the air. And before I saw it, I did this whole Facebook video that I don't normally do, and I had planned to be on here doing face cam and being like, oh my god, best movie ever. I even had this whole script written ahead of time for how awesome it was going to be, that I loved it so much. And I don't know, something just didn't feel so good. Something felt kind of cheap about the whole thing. And all my expectations might be partially to blame. Maybe the fact that Robert Downey Jr. said that I was never going to guess the ending is partially right, because I expected more. And don't get me wrong, people are going to love this movie. There is action, there is suspense, there is drama. I mean, there are scenes that are going to make you laugh, scenes that are going to make you applaud, scenes that are going to make you cry, and there is spectacle. Oh, there is amazing spectacle. But the story isn't really there connecting all of it. So I'm giving this a silver rating. And I think part of that is because of continuity. So let me just real quick say, what I do here is I talk about how and why we write stories and how we tell them and why we tell them. And I think continuity is going to have to be something pushed up, because I think that's what's messing with me right here. If you want to know more about that, click subscribe, because that'll be in a future video when I dissect the entire idea of continuity. Come to think of it, it's kind of funny. It's actually the perfect comic book movie, because it felt like all the worst aspects of comic books to me. So, I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but I will say, point blank, this is not the movie I signed up for. But you are going to have fun. And maybe at the end of the day, that's all you need, is some good old fashioned fun. But other than the fact that the Thanos copter doesn't show up, if you want any other spoilers, you're going to have to stick around, because before I throw this up and do the normal spoiler thing, I want to say the elements of this story, the ones that we normally talk about, are all things you already knew. There's nothing for me to talk about. What's the setting? What are the characters? What are the plot? If you don't know those, then you haven't seen any Marvel movie ever. I guess point of view I could make a few minutes of. There's some themes and symbolism that are really powerful. There was part of me that really wanted to do a good and bad and the ugly countdown like I normally do. But right now I'm so disgusted that I'm afraid that I might just do too many bad. And you know I try to look on the bright side of things. So let's kick this down, pretend we're Deadpool, and look on the bright side of life. So get ready, strap in, because now your spoiler warning.
So once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. Ba-da-na-na.
And I mean it. Last chance to turn back. 5, 4, 3, 2, and... Okay, so the time travel element was done bog standard for the MCU. There were little changes here and there, things that you expect. The fake trailer wasn't really that fake. There were a lot of scenes. In fact, that's part of the fake out, I think. I was a little disappointed, though, that things like the throwback to Iron Man 2, the Destroyer armor, that I had guessed about, just weren't there. But at the same time, I felt like, I don't know, one of my biggest pet peeves with Marvel is when they turn everything into a joke. I did a whole video on it where I compared and contrast when the best jokes land and when jokes rob you of the drama. And I really hit Thor Ragnarok hard for this. But at the end of the day, Thor actually felt more like a joke this time than he did in Ragnarok. Now, that is not to say that, again, that he doesn't get awesome moments, that there aren't great moments. And the fact is this is really the end of the first Avenger lineup. And to a certain extent, you can feel the bookend to this. But at the same time, there are moments where you sit there and you say, shouldn't there be more? Shouldn't there be something else waiting? Wasn't this supposed to start something too? Isn't this supposed to be in between? I mean, I guess Spider-Man Homecoming, or not Homecoming, Far From Home, Spider-Man Far From Home is going to be the one to launch the next phase. But even that feels like, and I'm not going to spoil it too much, but when you get to the end, you'll understand why I can't imagine that Far From Home is going to be able to be relatable at all with what happens here. The Infinity Gauntlet is by and far the weakest version of the Infinity Gauntlet I have ever seen. The rules and structure they put to those stones and what they can and can't do don't make a lot of sense to me. And at the end of the day, there are a lot of other things that happened in MCU movies previously that feel cheaper for having watched this. And moving again into Phase 4, I have to wonder, did they do any service to the movies that are coming up? I mean, there are, again, great scenes. I can tell you right now, the scene at the Sanctum Sanctorum, the scene where they are talking about what they're going to do, the scene where just about every scene Robert Downey Jr. is in is great. And there are big fist pumps. There are moments that make me say, this is what I wanted an Avenger movie to be like. In fact, one of those big fist pump moments is Captain America fighting with Mjolnir. I wanted that in Avengers 2. But here it felt so just like, meh. After all this time, all we have is a big knockdown, drag-out fight with a bunch of nameless, faceless villains. I guess that's kind of what the MCU does, right? I mean, and just to put an even finer point on it, all of a sudden, at the end, Captain Marvel shows up, and I'm like, she's literally your biggest gun, and she is just wasted in this. And I do mean wasted. And one of the big fears I had was that they would turn her into some sort of weird women power thing when her women power should be just that she's a powerful woman. And they do just that. They have this scene where all of the women are fighting, but they like completely and totally just make it this big point that it's the women doing the fighting. Ooh, isn't that badass? Several of these characters are super badass. Point blank, Scarlet Witch and Captain Marvel are two of my favorite characters. And I'm still like, meh. I'm left wondering what Marvel was thinking. The end of this movie is obviously a bookend. And if it was the end, this wouldn't be a silver rating. This would be, hey, you guys stuck the landing. This is perfect. This is the end of Hero's journey. This is the point where people have perfectly managed these things. But it's not the end. We've got MCU movies planned forever and ever. We just reacquired X-Men and stuff like that. So it kind of feels a little cheap and cheesy, especially with things that don't make sense and should have been explained. But for as much fun as this movie could be, as much as this could be a bookend, I'm still feeling like if one of my friends handed me this story and said, what do you honestly think? Help me make this right. I jam-packed my notes full of show, don't tell. Too much character growth happens off screen. Too many big things happen and change for characters. You can't have characters that for your entire story happen one way, and then all of a sudden jump forward and now they all act differently because, well, they changed over the course of that amount of time that you're not watching them. You just can't do that. And I know people are going to say that this is me being overly critical, and again, I'm trying not to be. So I'm going to ask you guys to do me a favor before the normal things I ask you to do. Leave me a comment down below. Tell me what your favorite part about Endgame was and why it was badass and awesome. Because there were so many great moments in there that I don't want to forget that just because the story itself seems to have fallen apart for me. Which again makes it a very good comic book adaptation. And then of course I have to still ask you to do all the normal things, like and share this video. Click the subscribe button if you're new here because I'm definitely going to talk about why it is I think continuity is both good and bad. I think I'll start with reviewing a Star Trek thing about that. But I want to give a big shout out thanks to my patrons, and just in general to everyone who's listening to my crazy, weird ideas. Even if I didn't enjoy the movie that much, I'm sure there's a lot of people that did. Some of the people leaving the theater were talking about this was the best movie they've ever seen, and I'm not agreeing with them, but hey, if you had fun, maybe that's the point of the story. For now, I hope you have a good night, and thanks for watching.